But in terms of where we are now, I think there are probably close to 10 boards. There are 5 Scrum teams within this program operating across multiple service lines. We've aligned ourselves sort of from the point of view that there are sort of specific factories, a factory for development work, a factory for non-development work from an analysis and design perspective. We spent a lot of time thinking about what our definition of done is across those 2 different factories and how work moves between those factories to the point where it fulfills those definitions of done, reaches a certain maturity and is ready to begin development. So from that perspective, I think our methodology has evolved quite a bit. It's also from the perspective of like embracing the specific concepts of Agile. I mean, we've spent a lot of time training the team, doing more in-depth Scrum Master training and certification. So like the entire team, analysts, developers, went through a certain base level of training, and then we spent a lot more time digging in with the Scrum Masters. I think we're working to adopt Agile as much as possible while also really adapting it to meet Cushman's needs. I know that we want to try and embrace it as like fully as possible without sort of polluting it or diluting it. And so we're really, really trying to do that, but also we're embracing the things that make sense for us, and where they, facilitate the conversation, where they make the work visible, where they provide us the ability to get a clear understanding of how much work is being taken on and how long it will take for that work to be completed. I think we're really trying to be as flexible and as open-minded as possible.
So if we look at the hyperautomation program at Cushman Wakefield at this point, we are a large program. There are about 15 to 20 folks in that core COE and business analyst, manager, Scrum Master, senior manager positions. We've also got a corresponding 15 to 20 folks on the development team with various capabilities that are partnering with them. So we've got a large program. On top of that, we've got full 24/7 production support of automations provided by Ashling's MROC team, which is a global team really to span those time zones. So we've integrated all of these teams that are helping to solve related problems into one agile way of working, and there's something to be said for that for sure.
The hyper automation program at Cushman was getting started. As any kind of new operation, we were really focused on, establishing an operating model and governance and putting in place the right processes. And at first we were focused on, after we identified a pipeline and a roadmap with the service lines and functions that were partnering with us. We really worked in a waterfall methodology, and this was great for a time, especially as we were small and everyone kind of knew where things were at in the process. But as our team started to really grow, and as we started to get a more diverse set of projects and a more diverse team and set of stakeholders, it was really important for us to focus in on improving the parts of the process that were either becoming bottlenecks or not creating transparency or actually like inhibiting speed to value. So a lot of those elements such as like documentation and outputs, like process definition, documentation, as well as the solution and the technical documentation, kind of fell out organically throughout the later half of 2020. But a lot of the pain points or the feedback around our waterfall process came from team conversations and kind of just focusing on continuous improvement. So the first step, once we identified kind of the elements of our team and the process that we wanted to really enable and unlock value from, we then kind of established, the concept of okay, Agile could be a way forward for us to deliver the transparency and create structure around delivering our product. So we, engaged a leader in the industry in terms of training. We, across the board, all of our team members, as well as our key stakeholders, attended several day workshops. In addition to that, we had certain individuals go through Scrum Master certification. So that really outlined kind of to us the way of working within Agile, but then actually what we had to do was make investment in the technology and investment in terms of time to actually understand what Agile and Scrum meant for us as a team. So initially we kind of started to slowly roll out in chunks to the teams, right? We worked at updating and iterating on documentation and incorporating that into our waterfall process before we took the leap and made a shift more grand, right, across the board. It became a necessity to have this because we were onboarding so many people at once. So we, as new members of the team were joining, we were very focused in on making sure that they had the tools and the training around the new way of working.
I think when I came on, there was a lot of like philosophizing, right, about things like, oh, how should we do this? What should it look like? What's the optimal way? Thinking it over, rethinking it over, like that kind of stuff. And I think eventually you guys, like when I started, you reached this sort of critical mass point of like, we just have to double down, do it, and then learn on the fly as we go. And I think that's where you guys like eventually got to, as I saw it, and it was like, okay, great. Like we can only design so much. We have to start using it and then get the feedback from the process and incorporate that feedback in the process, and then like keep moving along. If that's what you're trying to say.
Yeah, I think the hardest part for our team was the concept around failing fast, because we were so new in terms of our program and operating within Cushman that we didn't necessarily want to misstep or potentially like lose our stakeholders' trust. But at the same time, that's innately kind of what Agile is about, and improving on your failures and identifying where the improvement needs to be quickly. So I think that was the biggest hurdle for us to kind of get past before we could really roll Agile out.
No, makes total sense. I think so. For me, that was probably the biggest concept that was embraced right off the bat was ability to fail fast. It's uncomfortable for any team to go through that, but I think the leadership of the program recognized we were going to have to do that to some extent. So when I joined the program, which now was 8-9 months ago, the program was growing and kind of doing things in that waterfall fashion, Meredith, like you described, sort of the traditional scoped work, one project at a time. And that was working on the smaller scale, but it was clear that, the team was growing, the kind of benefit and business case that the team was expected to deliver was growing, and that just wasn't going to scale as well. And so it was clear we needed a new way of working. So that's where I think first embracing that concept that, hey, what we're doing is not perfect right now and it can't scale as well. So we've got to make some changes, and then not being afraid to try some things out, fail fast. Certainly saying we're moving to an agile methodology is a common thing that organizations do, but it's not an answer and a one size fits all solution, right? It's really about taking some of those concepts and embracing them and making them work for Cushman and Wakefield, making them work for an automation environment, because I think there are certainly some differences to custom software development there. I think making the investment in the team and in the training to go through Agile boot camps, that's a serious deal, and I think it really is necessary. It's one thing for leadership to tell their teams they want to move to a new way of working, but if you don't really enable your teams and make that initial upfront investment, it's really tough to make a transition. You've also got to recognize that during that transition period, things might slow down. We tried not to let things grind to a halt, but there were certainly, our factory, so to speak, lowered its production, I think, significantly in the early part of 2021 in order to make this transition and hopefully catch up and be much more efficient on the back end. And so there weren't, not to say we weren't without pain points, but I think it was kind of a fun journey to go through those boot camps to kind of learn together, acknowledge that we all had learning to do no matter what our background experience was, and I think came out better on the end for it.
I think there were a couple of, so like, I think the development activity stuff, right? So the non-dev stuff, it took time. Like, it's one thing to learn concepts, but you have to also like work with a tool. And so that was another piece. I mean, you can do it in a board, or you can do it with stickies, right? But everybody has to sort of learn how to take that from the conceptual into the physical. And so that piece, and then I was gonna say also, it was like I think the other piece that might have been pain point is around like digging in deep with the business, right? And getting them, because it's not just about like, we could do it all day long. If the business is not willing to accept an iterative approach to things, if they're not willing to make decisions and stand by those decisions, and they're not willing to pivot in a lot of instances, when things become, so like when something else becomes a higher priority, then that really is when things start to fall down, right? Because we're developing for them. They are our customer. And so I think those are the biggest things I would say from a pain point perspective.
And I was going to add on to that. I think helping to alleviate that really was getting the product owners and really our business partners and stakeholders involved in the transition up front. And not losing sight of why we were doing this. Thinking back again to when I joined the program, I remember talking about a couple pain points and really thinking about the high level outcomes from the program, right? I mean, certainly we want to be continuing to automate more and deliver more value to the rest of the organization.
Right.
But there were some specific things that we could measure, right? So, average time, average implementation time, average build time. So really starting to think about our velocity and our throughput and some of these high level metrics as we were building automations in the old way of working. And there was some improvement to be made. So really keeping those top of mind, keeping the why top of mind. I think, the other one was really being able to be adaptive to change at any point in the life cycle of what we're doing and the work that we're doing. And that's obviously a core Agile concept. So, I think keeping that why really top of mind and being on the same page with those business stakeholders and our partners and customers, right? Because, what they needed to recognize was we're not just changing the way of working to make their lives harder or our lives harder, right? We want to have better outcomes together. And so getting a seat at the table is going to be important right off the bat. And that's something that I think this program did really successfully.
Yeah, I'd agree. And I was going to say, I think just maybe also to like kind of build on what Meredith was saying before around, and you were saying before around the business, or like Cushman in general, investing in this team, and how that training was a really big indicator of their willingness to participate in this. I think the other piece too is that the business, like our customers within the business, also were very much sort of like willing to sort of hold judgment, and let the kind of proof be in the pudding when it came to like us being able to make the work visible, use the metrics that we were getting out of the process from like a velocity perspective and a timing perspective to inform the communication that we had back to them, so we could say, actually, we're going to deliver this thing on this time frame, and that's what we've committed to. And then when we were able to do that, it became easier. That feedback was like, okay, yeah, I know you've told me before and you've delivered before. And I think it really is like those Agile concepts. It is the metrics, it's the use of the tool. It's approaching things in a very like standardized, sort of like consistent way that helps us to be able to do that, which has alleviated some of those pain points going forward, but you have to kind of work through them.
You do, and you've got to trial things and incrementally improve. Obviously a big Agile concept too, but look at, we're about almost halfway through 2021. you know, we continue to adapt and change. It's been a journey, and it's going to continue to be a journey. Certainly not overnight that that we shifted our way of working, and our business partners, you know, understood and got the outcomes they were expecting. It's been a journey so far.
I think a little bit, you know, a lesson learned, but also a little bit to the question around working continuously to change and how often we're changing. You know, at first we were taking input in real time about the way our, you know, we chose DevOps, Microsoft DevOps, as our technology platform for work management. So we were taking feedback in real time about changes that needed to be made within DevOps, but also, you know, process changes. And we were starting to create too much change too quickly. And so that was actually inhibiting us from seeing the value early on that Agile was presenting and how we were trending in terms of adoption. So I think one of the biggest and best decisions we made was to kind of pause changes, assess them for 6 sprints, so about 12 weeks, right? And really say what's working and what's not working through a full team retrospective. Now, I think our team has several touch points over a course of a sprint through our design thinking sessions, between kind of our all team sprint retrospectives. So organically, feedback and ideation and you know, kind of excitement around Agile was coming to light through those conversations. But by, you know, documenting, assessing, prioritizing, and then implementing after that 6 sprint window allowed for us to be intentional and not create too many waves as we were starting to, you know, stabilize and see the value.
Yeah, I was gonna say I 100% agree with that. I think the other thing too is like we weren't just making change for the sake of making change, right? It was really informed by the work, right? And it was embracing the idea that like, hey, let's do a retro. Let's spend some time, let things bake in. Let's do a retro with the whole group, figure out what worked best, what didn't work best, talk amongst ourselves, think about what we cared about standardizing and changing, right? And the stuff that we really didn't care about, right? That say if a team wanted to go off and do that thing that they absolutely could, right? It wasn't going to impact our ability to sort of measure things or deliver in a consistent way to the customer. And I think a lot of that was reinforced through Scrum Master alignments, right? So we have this series of meetings that happen bi-weekly, where the Scrum Masters are getting together and they're talking and they're ideating around what needs to change and what could get better and how it could get better. And then once there's consensus, a lot of that is bubbled up into that design thinking session, right? And then it's shared out to everyone. And there's additional brainstorming and discussion around in that forum too, right? So I do think that there's a really good amount of like thoughtful change that's happening within the organization. It is also, and it is that feedback loop, right? So it's making a change, collecting data around it, measuring it, and then quickly bringing those changes in our hypotheses for resolutions back into the process too.
That's a good one. And maybe one, maybe going back to the beginning, one answer I would add to the early tell us about the program is, you know, this automation program within the transformation team is really, we're talking about a COE that includes 15 to 20, you know, analysts, scrum masters, managers, and then another development team of 15 to 20 at any given time. So we're talking about a large program, and that really necessitates having a number of different Scrum teams attacking, you know, their own unique problems within their product line. I'm sure that there's programs out there who have gone to, you know, taken Scrum methodology, right, and had a centralized automation Scrum team, and that might work, you know, based on the size and scale. But that was something I think we quickly saw was going to present us a challenge. But the great thing about it, right, is we create these kind of little incubators for ideas and ways of working, and kind of little innovation hubs, right? You want the Scrum teams to still be aligned at a high level and not get too off the rails, but folks really felt the ability to try out different ways of working. And when we talk about some of these changes we make over, let's say, a 6-sprint trial period, right? We're using that time to kind of build up feedback, observations, measurements, outcomes within each of the Scrum teams. So the concept of retrospectives has been huge in being baked into this methodology, both at the smaller Scrum team level and then getting together at the bigger level. A lot of those, the cadence that Dave pointed to there is really aimed at sharing and at learning from each other. So that's been, I think, really critical to allow some, allow the Scrum teams to a little bit operate on their own and try some stuff out and embrace that concept of being able to fail, right? And then taking those lessons back to the broader team.
Yeah, I think in some ways it was like, in some cases, to say what we're saying might be heresy from an Agile Scrum purist perspective, right? But I also think that like we don't exist in a vacuum here, and so we have to learn and change. And I think the other thing, folks don't just sort of like spring forth from the womb fully evolved, like they're in the like highest, highest, most evolved state. And so I do think that from the perspective of where we have been from the 2020 timeframe to where we are now to where we're trying to go, right? Like you can think of it as a maturity model. And so I do think that we've hit certain markers around like where we have been, where we wanted to be, where we are, and then where we're going. And I think from the perspective of like what's coming up in the next year, I think it's not just, we have this large program, we have 4 to 5 teams, 10 boards, and now it's starting to be the collaboration across teams through all of the communication that we're doing and surfacing common opportunities, and then figuring out like, okay, how do we work together to get higher levels of benefit for the organization, right? So I do think that we're starting to even push past where we had wanted to be and naturally are being pulled into like figuring out bigger and deeper problems and like more unique ways of working for us.
Dave, that's such a good point, because I feel like now that the teams have an operating model around planning for work after it's identified, we've benefited from being able to have conversations with other Scrum teams that will have either similar scope of work or have dependencies or similar dependencies on work we are doing. To say, hey, we're exploring how we can better integrate with Workday. We know that you have a similar process in your space. When are you planning on starting discovery? And that enables us to either identify where we can help support discovery because we've already started that and it takes, it overlaps, or where we need to pause and have conversations around prioritization so that we're not duplicating work.
Yeah, I think the other thing too is like the concepts around Agile, right? I know this was kind of hammered into us a lot when we were doing training, was like, it's about the conversation, it's about the conversation, it's about the conversation. And I don't think that we've lost that in any particular way. And I actually think that we're looking to break barriers down between our service lines and teams so that we can continue to have those conversations. I mean, even we were talking recently about another service line who needed some, who needed an automation that was very similar to one that we have for occupier services. And so the idea was like, it really wasn't a big enough benefit for one of us to do, but if we combined the cases and then worked on streamlining that, we probably could do something that benefited both of us with half of the amount of effort because like only one team would need to do it. Or we're talking about, okay, can you delay your your particular development, and we'll give you a resource. We'll time box that to a day as oversight because he's got the knowledge, and your resource doesn't. And so we're trying to make sure that like we're working across and we're contributing to each other's value, and that we're sharing lessons learned as well. And I think that's kind of the crux of what this whole thing was supposed to be.
Yeah, that's been very, very awesome to see the collaboration between the teams and identifying some of those things. I know you guys talked about things like dependencies, also kind of that synergy and value add, right? When you bring these teams together, and the maybe something a little bit unique about how Cushman and Wakefield is structured, right, based on service lines, as opposed to kind of the horizontal function. It's allowed us to really have a lot of reuse and learning from a process perspective, right? Look how many times and in how many different product lines we have automated some part of the invoice processing, business process, right? And we haven't tried to resolve that problem 6 different times. We've taken what we've learned and reused. We're getting a little bit more mature to the point of being able to even reuse things like machine learning models or natural language processing or data capture type of predictive models. And so that's where this thing can really explode and scale when you've got a lot of reuse for other parts of the organization. So that's even been cool to see thus far.
Yeah, I think we're a bit in that like intermediary step too, because not only are we aligned by service line, we're also starting to layer capability on top, right? So when you think of like Indico, right, that's cutting across all of our service lines, and that's a capability that all of us can leverage. And so the reality is that we're probably even being pulled more so in that type of a direction in sort of like the next phase of our evolution. So it will be really interesting to see like how far we go in that direction, while we're also still working very much towards like service line of business work as well. So that is going to be a very interesting thing to see.
I think another pain point that our team has faced is the change management aspect of any project, right? Any product release. We want to make sure that we are providing best-in-class training and communication to those that will be impacted or leveraging the automation. And so we've partnered with Cushman Center of Excellence for communications and change management. And it's really important, it has been really important for us to integrate that team into every kind of facet of our Agile process, right? They have their own board, they're in our stand-ups, they're invited and are an interactive participant in our retrospectives and planning sessions. And so for them to have exposure to what's coming up and in terms of go lives and having them, enabling them to plan for the communications and the deliverables required has been immensely helpful in us mitigating gaps in where we weren't able to, fully communicate or where we needed to provide additional training. And I think another point that is probably better on the front end of this whole spiel is that, like from a change management perspective, right, there are different requirements, right, from an automation standpoint because of the way that a process may not have end-to-end automation with exception handling or kind of other ways that an end user would engage with automation. It's kind of our responsibility to not only, provide that, training and education, but communicate timely in order for the business and the leadership of that service line or functional area to plan for and react to the changes. So I think by integrating the change management team into our Agile way of working, we've proven that we can be iterative even when it's not, a software build, right? We're iterating on the deliverables and the communications that team is providing.
A quick perspective. What has impressed me about this program and the way they're incorporating change management is really that it's being viewed as a part of the overall product, right? It's not a kind of supplementary, nice to have type of thing. If you really want to drive adoption and really get the value out of the automations that are being provided, change management is critical. I've worked in implementing various softwares for my whole career, and too often have I seen the first line item to be scratched from any contract is change management, because it can be viewed as a nice to have, and it's not the cold hard technology being delivered, right? But when you consider it part of the overall product's success, it can be really powerful, and that's something that you guys have done well here.
Yeah, just to kind of follow on, or maybe even reinforce Meredith's point, the organization that I came from before being here at Cushman was in a way less evolved state in terms of their automation capabilities. But even then, one of the things that we had identified there was like, we just have to get training, we have to get change and comms going if any of this is going to be successful. And we weren't able to do that. We didn't have buy-in from the business to participate, like to give us change resources in order to participate in that activity. And it was a huge impediment. So that this group of folks have understood that and have embraced it and then brought those resources is a huge contributor to the success.
We talked a little bit about what makes kind of Cushman unique. I do think for folks who are thinking about an agile way of working and are more used to the custom software development application of agile concepts, right? You've heard us mention probably a couple times on here, the folks who are the purists, close your ears at this point. We're very much, we're very much kind of making this methodology our own for this program, and you could consider it somewhat of a hybrid, right? But I do believe that automation presents some unique challenges that you might not find in other areas of custom software development. And I don't think it's any secret. I think a lot of organizations have struggled to really be, actually building automation in a truly agile fashion. I think, sort of the iterative release and build and kind of requirements gathering, full life cycle type of concept can be difficult to apply to an automation that is really an end-to-end business process. It has a start and it has a finish, and at the end of the day, it's kind of a serialized process, right? And so I think we've kind of taken our spin on that, which is, let's break that up into very manageable chunks of work, right, that we can kind of make progress against on an hourly, daily, sprint cadence, which for us is 2 weeks basis. Always be thinking about releasing something, even if it doesn't mean release to production, like in the traditional sense, right? You can add some steps in there of demoing to your business partners, releasing into the test environment, and then certainly at a macro level, looking at our big, hairy, complex processes. We've done a great job of identifying kind of a roadmap and kind of iterative releases for that process, whether that means taking functionality, taking a line in the sand on functionality and expanding it over time, whether it means piloting with a smaller scope and then opening the floodgates later on. I think that's been a really important approach that's allowed us to start realizing value and going to production with MVP earlier. It's not a big bang approach, right? But that's been a big change in the way we're thinking about these releases, and the way I think now our business partners are also kind of expecting that to be our way of working, because it's proven to be a lot more successful, than waiting on the big bang approach.
I think early on, this is not so much automation and it's not so much agile solely, but I think earlier on, we were still very much in the mode of educating our stakeholders on all that was possible with automation, right? And when we say automation in, Cushman world, we have several different capabilities, right? To, Dave, your point around Indico, right? With natural language processing, as well as machine learning. These are, concepts that a lot of people hear about and read about, but they've not truly been, a seat at the table in terms of exposure and understanding what it can do for them in their role. So, early on, we were focused on educating them about automation and the value that it drives, and then layering on top the agile approach to delivering automation. And because Cushman as a whole doesn't have, kind of a company-wide Agile approach. Now, we do have pockets of different, service lines and functional areas that operate in Agile. We kind of have this, dual opportunity to drive value and, educate our stakeholders. And as they've gotten comfortable with the automation capabilities and what it means and how we can deliver work and how we've proven to deliver value through this, Agile methodology, they get comfortable and, they start to ask more questions and dig deeper and actually get more proactive and saying, hey, I'm going to give you this enhancement, but it's not a priority, right? I want you to prioritize the other work we've discussed in sprint planning, but, just line of sight into something we're thinking about.
I think that's actually one of like the biggest things that has been a part of the success of Agile implementation within Cushman Wakefield, because I think people just seem to, there are people, which isn't unique to automation at all. I think it's very common within organizations that are doing Agile sort of development or product development, or when they're looking at processes that they want to automate, they see the full end-to-end process and they think of it like a big rock with a big value associated to it. And they're like, if I can't take that whole rock and move it over there, there's no point in doing it. And the reality is, actually, we should be breaking that rock up into smaller rocks, into smaller pieces, attacking what we can attack and what is best suited to be automated, and just work through those things while we then later prioritize the other things, right? And it may just be like those other things just really can't be automated or aren't worth the automation right now. But the business has really been willing to accept those concepts and accept those answers around, like, actually, we're not gonna automate your end-to-end process. It'll take too long. It will probably change at some point and break, and you won't get the value. So let's concentrate on the things that make the most sense. And they've been willing to be like, oh yeah, okay, fine, let's do that. Let's take the full process, we'll decompose it, and then we'll iteratively develop on the things that make sense to be developed. And then we'll enhance them and we'll improve them as we go along. So I do think it's what you're saying, Meredith. It's that the business and stakeholders have been willing to accept a sort of like no but when it comes to these conversations.
And there's an element of, trust and expectation setting that goes along with that, right? And I think that's, having them there from the start of the journey, but also within each new business relationship, you sort of have to pilot the concept and prove some success, right? Prove that this is going to work. Because at the end of the day, folks need to see results. They can only trust your word and what you're telling them is going to happen for so long until you show them it can happen. And I think that's been a key outcome of this as well so far. Yeah,
which is another thing Meredith said as well, which is like, in those where we were coming from 2020, like you guys had to spend a lot of time, and I came at the beginning of 2021. They spent a lot of time working with the business and then basically proving themselves, right, and getting that trust within the organization. And without that foundation, I don't think we would have gotten them to the point where they're like, okay, I'll accept the decomposed process, the pieces of it, and then we'll work from there.
"2020 was the first full year of the program in its infancy, right? Our Cushman and Wakefield leadership was bought in on the idea of having the transformation organization really embedded in our service lines and functional areas to deliver value across the different processes. And that really started with laying the foundation of which technologies and which kind of process approaches we were going to take in order to deliver that value. So we started off with engaging UiPath for their robotics process automation technology. And with the UiPath platform, it comes with a lot of different products and capabilities in itself, right? Analytics, they have some document understanding and OCR capabilities, as well as process mining and task mining. So we've started to, as we've established a foundation and started to prove out that RPA, robotics process automation, can work at Cushman, we've started to layer on top of our RPA different components of the UiPath product suite. But in addition to UiPath, we've also partnered with Indico, who is a provider of a technology that is natural language processing with machine learning and OCR capabilities. And with those two products, we're really able to have this comprehensive, hyper automation product that we deliver to the Cushman Wakefield service lines and functional areas. We've had actually great success in demonstrating the capabilities of machine learning too. With our development team having strong knowledge in Python scripting, we've been able to, we used a use case in HR to deliver one of the first true production machine learning models at Cushman & Wakefield globally. And that was very early on in the days of this team. And I think that use case, along with invoice processing, leveraging Indico, were two big catalysts for us, kind of the momentum going into 2021. And now kind of thinking about where this program can go next from a technology stack perspective, it's digging deeper into process mining and process analytics, and how do we take that data and really transform how we're looking at what a process is in its current state and where the opportunity areas are, either for process improvement or other technology solutions.
Awesome. I would just add, definitely the process understanding side of the house is big, and there's tons of opportunity there. We've pretty successfully, I think, piloted process mining here, and I know there are other areas where we want to deploy process mining, task mining, et cetera. I think, wrapped into that kind of analytics bubble, we've also done a lot of sort of custom work using Power BI. We've leveraged Alteryx as sort of an ETL data transformation tool. On the kind of more innovative side, we've explored some not only natural language processing, like Meredith talked about, but natural language generation using a couple different tools. Aria is one we've experimented and POC'd as well. So I think the capability possibilities are somewhat endless here, and it's been really awesome to see the way that has evolved over the last year and a half here.
So in terms of the commercial real estate industry, property technology is nothing new, right? I think, from an industry perspective, our competitors, large and, otherwise, have been very focused in technology investment. I think where Cushman is starting to kind of separate itself and carve out, a path to potentially an industry leader position is in how we bring not only automation and hyper automation technology and solutions to our internal stakeholders, but how do we then either leverage it for our clients or prove to our clients how we're delivering better, faster, and driving more value to them in the services Cushman & Wakefield provides.
I think the things I'm enthusiastic about are how we sort of implement or sort of integrate capabilities, like further integrate capability level development within our Scrum teams or across our Scrum teams, right, as a separate Scrum team, and make sure that we're utilizing them appropriately and correctly. I think it's the collaboration, it's the evolution of the sort of our implementation of Agile and working across teams, trying to figure out and embed that more, so that we are really sort of moving more and more towards being kind of one particular team. So I think that's the thing that really is interesting. It's going to be about solving that particular problem, that's going to be really kind of cool for 2022.
I'm really excited to see how we can continue to prove internally and externally how we can deliver on innovative, solutions for key, processes that are facing challenges, bottlenecks, individuals that are, working differently and wanting to work differently than how it's just always been done.
I'm a big believer in the future of work. I wouldn't be doing what I do if I was not a believer in that. I don't think Ashling Partners would exist if we weren't all believers in that. So, in my role as your partner with Cushman and Wakefield, I'm excited about how the relationship continues to evolve. I think the program has grown in terms of capability and scale right alongside Ashling as we're growing as a company and kind of pushing the envelope together. So what really excites me is getting into some of those new technology areas, solving the more complex problems, looking to our research and development team to help us solve some of the unique needs as we really do continue to be more on the cutting edge than on the lagging edge. Of course, without getting to a point of being recklessly on the cutting edge. So we want to be safely on the cutting edge. But I'm super excited about what the possibilities are for the rest of this partnership.
But I also think one of the big contributors to success, and it continues to contribute to success, is the partnership with Ashling. And I think that Ashling has been, for lack of a better term, like a fantastic Sherpa, right, in this whole effort, kind of leading us, kind of showing us the way, but also allowing us to do, right, and learn, so that we're able to continue this journey. But they're continuing to guide us, right, and help us along that way. So I don't think it would be very hard. It would be much harder to be here without.
Like, I do think Ashling provided immense value in the early stages of the Agile identification as well as the implementation. In the early stages of identifying Agile as a way forward for our team, Ashling Partners was able to introduce us to a leader in the industry, collaborative leadership team out of Minneapolis, and they were great in setting up workshops for our team to go through, as well as facilitating the training for our Scrum Masters to get their certification. So I think early on, the kind of speed to value was enabled by Ashling's partnership there, as well as as we started to think about implementing Agile, having you all be integrated already with the way our team was working from a discovery standpoint, from a development standpoint, and then through hypercare into kind of post-production support, right? Agile doesn't stop at production, right? We have to be agile in how we address issues that come up post-production. So having Ashling involved, you, Ryan, the solution architects, in the feedback loops around what was working and what wasn't working, and you coming to the table with insights that you were seeing elsewhere in the industry, was really a big factor in how quickly our team was able to adopt Agile, and not only adopt, but be able to iterate on how we were working.
All right, so thanks, Dave and Meredith. Really appreciate you guys taking the time to chat with us today and talk about the journey that Cushman & Wakefield's program has been on, and really the excitement to hopefully come through the rest of this year and into the next year. So I really appreciate you guys taking the time. It's been fun chatting with you as always.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks, Ryan.
Okay.